Now let's join WIND's Pat Foley for the Chicago Blackhawks pregame show.
The Chicago Blackhawks have a major undertaking on their hands tonight. If they are to break a 5-game losing streak, they're going to have to do it against the hottest team in the National Hockey League. Hello again, everybody. Pat Foley from Chicago Stadium, where the Edmonton Oilers are in town tonight. The Oilers have played 18 games. They have lost 2. 15 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie. They are averaging 6 goals a game. They've scored 109 goals in the 18 games that they've played. Nobody else has scored more than 98, which that would be the Quebec Nordiques. So the Blackhawks and the Oilers here tonight. We'll have some more information after this on WIND.
Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri.
So far this year, the Edmonton Oilers have had none of the problems on the road that the Blackhawks have been experiencing. Edmonton has played 11 road games, and they are 9-2 so far away from home. Tonight, they are finishing up a 5-game road trip. They have won the first 4 of those 5 games, winning in Winnipeg. They won in Quebec City. They won in Washington, and last night they won in Detroit. After falling behind 2-0, they roared back for a 7-3 win over the Red Wings. We're going to hear some interesting comments, I think, from Orval Tessier tonight. Stay tuned for that. We're going to hear from Orval after this timeout on WIND. Well, Orval, last night it seemed like you had things going pretty well in the first period. I thought it was your period, even though they got a deflection for a 1-0 lead, and then just one of those spurts again that have seemed to crop up lately, and all of a sudden it's 5-0 after 2, and that's the ball game.
Well, you know, it was a little bit discouraging last night, and certainly not to the point where you're discouraged that you're going to quit, but discouraging in this sense that you look up at the game, and after 13 or 14 shots on goal, you're down 5-0, and you've got 23 or 24, and you outshoot the opposition. And I thought we played a half-decent hockey game, but every time you turn around, the puck is in the net. I mean, and I'm not blaming just goaltending. I mean, we're making mistakes, and every time they touched the puck, it went in, and every time we tried something, we couldn't put it past Millen.
Well, the numbers are pretty obvious. I'm not telling you much to say in the 5-game losing streak. You've only scored 13, and you've allowed 32. So what I'm wondering now is, when you have the next couple days to practice, where do you start? Is the best offense a good defense, or is the best defense a good offense?
Well, in the last 3 games we've played, we've allowed shots in goal, which is an average of about 23 shots. In the last 3 games we've played, we've also allowed 17 goals against. Or, I'm sorry, we've allowed 14 goals against. Yeah. That's a goal every 5 shots. Now, you know, what type of defense can we improve on that when you're holding the opposition to 23 shots on goal? That's just about as low as anybody in the league right now. In the same period of time, I think we had 114 shots on goal, and I think we scored 4 goals. That's in the last three games. So obviously our offense isn't there, and obviously our defensive game in the last 3 games has been reasonably good. You take the New Jersey game, the Montreal game, and the Hartford game. 23 shots on goal, we should have won all 3 games with performances like that. But we've lost 97 goals on one side. I figured it out a little closer today, and I looked at the stats between Sutter, Secord, and Fraser. There's 97 goals that are gone right there on the left side. Sierra's gone. The only guy we have playing the left side that played some last year is Peter Marsh, and he had a total of 6 goals. We cannot put the puck in the net at the same rate as we did last year, with one side wiped out. And you say, well, the right side was weak. Well, the right side last year had 87 goals, or approximately that. My figures are not here right with me. But you've taken some of that to put on the left side to shore up the left side. You're weakening the whole hockey club. And at the same time, some of these guys are having a bit of a slump, so they're not getting their goals. And it's a time right now that it's as dark as I've seen it. I've had it happen to me in junior hockey, where you go to an early good start, then you fade off in November, Pat. But then we always were able to do something about it. And personally, I think that we have been patient long enough. I think the hockey club should do something about it. We've only been able to bring up 1 man to replace 3, and that's a guy that hasn't played for a year and a half. I'm a little embarrassed in that situation, and I'm a little upset.
Are we speaking trade here, or just bringing some guys up from the minors to help out?
I don't think there's too much left in Springfield to help out, because we did last year take quite a few players from Springfield. I think it's time that, we can make excuses and this and that, but we've got to improve our hockey club, because our left wing situation is not just a one-day situation. It's going to be a long-range situation, and we are not able to compete with any hockey team in this league when you take 100 goals off one side and expect to play and remain on a par, because it affects the other guys and it weakens your goals at center and on the right side. And I think right now it's time to go into action.
The Daubers are down. I mean, there can be no hiding that. Are you concerned at all with effort? I think you partially answered that question before, but have you had any feeling that the effort wasn't what you'd like it to be?
I think the guys are working hard enough. I think last night, frustration is the biggest thing that we've got going for us right now. You see a Dougie Wilson trying to do so much that he's making mistakes by overreacting and doing too many things, trying to guys like Wilson and Bob Murray and those guys, they want to get out of this losing streak, and sometimes by trying too hard, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. The thing is to try and say, well, just play your natural game and see what happens, but it's tough to tell that to a player when he's losing, because he wants to get out of it. I am not displeased with our type of effort. We've outshot every hockey club in quite a few games right now, and we just have not come up with any goals, and we have not come up with solid goaltending. And I'm just wondering whether it's not time to have a look at our young goalies.
You get a real easy test tonight. The Edmonton Oilers have only lost 2 games. They're only averaging 6 goals a game. They throw so much firepower at you that certainly your defensive game that I think have been playing pretty well in the last little while, that's going to get a big test.
Well, I think Edmonton's got the best hockey team in the league this year right now. I mean, the stats prove it. I have, how much respect I have for the Islanders and the others, but when stats are stats, you've got the points on the board, you can't take them away from them, and they've won consistently on the road. They've only lost 2 games. Gretzky is showing everybody that he doesn't get tired. He just gets better, and it's a marvel just to watch him play. But I think the guys, they want to do their best. There's no question about it. But the guys also realize that we're awfully short-handed, and they're watching us to say, hey, what are you guys going to do up there? And right now, I think, I said the goaltenders a while ago, it seems nobody wants the number 1 job. It's been up for grabs since day one, and nobody seems to want it. Well, maybe we should offer it to somebody else or show it to somebody else and say, hey, a lot of teams have come in with young goaltenders have done extremely well. Beaupre in Minnesota, and Lassard, and Lemelin, and guys like that. Well, maybe we should have a look. I'm not saying that we will. That's not my department, but I'd be for it if it's ever mentioned.
A question about Tommy Lysiak, just about what's happening here. His injunction runs out tomorrow. Now, does that mean there will be a decision made of some sort, or can there be another injunction imposed? What do you know about the legal process there?
I haven't, Pat. I have not been informed of anything on the Lysiak case. All I was told is that he was okay to play today. I asked a couple of questions, and I was sort of left in the dark a little bit, so really I can't answer that question.
Okay. I got to ask you something pointedly here now. You've made some indications about being left in the dark on certain situations, and from everything you've said before in this interview, it certainly would indicate to me that in your opinion, it's time for the front office to get on the telephone and maybe make a move, and whatever it takes to shake up this hockey team, get some bodies in here to fill in some of the holes that have been left by injuries.
Well, maybe you got that indication. I'm part of that front office, so I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm just speaking for myself, and I mean it. I'm speaking sincerely. I don't think that we have in our organization the type of people ready enough to replace a Secord or a Sutter or a Fraser. We have some youngsters, not very many at the left side. McMurtry's a right winger, Frawley's a right winger. I don't think we have a left winger down in Springfield that can come in and replace one of those guys even on a temporary basis. So I do think that maybe we might have to look someplace else.
Okay, many thanks, Coach. Good luck.
Thank you.
That's Orval Tessier. You've been listening to the Hawk pregame show. Now stay tuned for Chicago Blackhawk hockey. first period summary now. The only goal of the game so far came at the 5:18 mark when the Oilers had a power play. Yeri Curry alone behind the Hawk goal threw it out into the slot, and just outside the goal crease alone was Willie Lindstrom, and he fired it by Esposito. Lindstrom the power play from Curry and Huddy at 5:18 for the only scoring in the game. Shots on goal in the first period. Edmonton at 13, 4. Now let me tell you, folks, the Blackhawks had a lot more offensive capabilities than 4 shots on goal, which means that in this first period, the Blackhawks could be labeled the gang that couldn't shoot straight. They certainly had enough opportunities to put a lot more pressure than 4 shots on Grant Fuhr, but time and time again, players in good position would miss the target. Period complete. It is 1-0 Oilers, and we'll hear from Dennis Savard after this on Talk Radio 56. Here's the second period summary now. The Hawks trailing 1-0 coming in. Got a power play chance. Now, here's a little kid who stands about 3'5", and he just scored on the score. Anyway, the Hawks trailing 1-0 coming in at a power play chance early. Here's what happened. Here's Murray to Savard. Savard wheeling over the Oiler line, shooting, blocked, they score! Savard! His shot was blocked! His shot was blocked by Randy Gregg just as it got underway, but then it turned into kind of a knuckleball, and Grant Fuhr had it go right in between his pads. Savard with a power play goal has tied the game at 1. Dennis Savard is 13th of the year from Bob Murray and Tony Esposito at the 1:04 mark to tie it up. Then just a great individual play by Steve Larmer as he dumped Glenn Anderson in the near corner of the Oilers zone with a solid, clean check. Took the puck away from him and centered one, and Billy Gardner fired it right in. Gardner, his second in 2 games and his 6th of the year, assisted by Larmer and Ben Wilson at 11:30 to give the Hawks a 2-1 lead. But the Oilers tied it up when Yeri Curry scored a power play goal off a miraculous feed from Wayne Gretzky, who was on the near board and shot it through 2 Blackhawks who seemed to be in his line of pass, and he somehow got it through to the far circle where Curry fired it in. Curry from Gretzky and Huddy at 12:51, a power play to tie the game at 2, and then a couple of minutes later, the Blackhawks regained the lead. Now Rick Patterson to Peter Marsh on left wing at center. Cleared it to Patterson over the line around Gretzky. Shoot! He scores! Ricky Patterson! Patterson stick-handled around Wayne Gretzky in the Oilers zone, and then fired it underneath the pads of Fuhr. Patterson scoring his first goal of the year, and the Blackhawks have regained the lead at 3-2. Patterson is first from Peter Marsh and Troy Murray at 16:23 to finish the scoring. The Hawks out shooting Edmonton 13-9 in the second period and for the game. The Oilers 22 shots and the Blackhawks with 17. Your score at the end of 2. The Blackhawks 3, the Oilers 2. We'll have the third period coming up shortly, but now Jack Stockton is ready with all the sports news of the day. I'm sure he's got plenty of it. I'm Pat Foley on Talk Radio 56.
Thank you, Pat. This is WI.
To the near side, and the Hawks clear it to center. 10 seconds left. Wilson stealing. Time for the open net. He scores! The Blackhawks are going to break their 5-game losing streak against the hottest team in the league. 5-3, Chicago.
Scored by number 24, Doug Wilson, unassisted at 19:52.
Now the draw. Greg Fox has it at center. A long shot, and the Hawks have broken the streak.
for a total of 30. Coming up, the J.B. Robinson Jewelers 3 stars of the game. The game's number 3 star, Chicago's Bill Gardner. The number 2 star of the game, Chicago's Troy Murray. And the J.B. Robinson Jewelers number 1 star of the game, Chicago's Tony Esposito.
Score 5-3 Hawks. We'll be back for the post game after this.
If you
Pat Foley back in Chicago Stadium. Here's the game summary now, and let me tell you, friends, it's games like this that make some of the more lethargic or dull games all worthwhile. Not only because the Hawks won, I just saw it was a great game to watch. Here's the summary: 17,534 on hand. They saw the Oilers score the only goal of the first period on a power play. Willie Lindstrom assisted by Yeri Curry and Charlie Huddy at 5:18. The Oilers out shooting the Hawks 13-4, although that wasn't really an indication of the period. The Hawks had only 4 shots in the period simply because they couldn't hit the net with a lot of good-looking chances that they had. But the Oilers took a 1-0 lead into the second. Dennis Savard tied it up on a power play goal, his 13th of the year, a long-range drive that was deflected by the Oiler defense and turned into a knuckleball. Wound up going between the pads of Fuhr. Savard is 13th from Bob Murray and Tony Esposito at the 1:04 mark to tie the game at 1. The Blackhawks then took the lead when Steve Larmer just made a great play, chasing after the puck in the Edmonton zone in the near corner. He just took Glenn Anderson and knocked him right to his backside, picked up the puck, fired a perfect pass to Bill Gardner, who buried it. Gardner is 6th and 2nd in 2 nights from Larmer and Ben Wilson at 11:30 to give the Hawks a 2-1 lead. The Oilers then tied it up when Wayne Gretzky made an incredible pass from the near board all the way across to the far circle when he seemingly had 2 Blackhawks in his line of passing, but thumped through the eye of the needle right to Yeri Curry, who scored. Curry the power play from Gretzky and Huddy at 12:51. That was the only point Gretzky got in the game, and coincidentally, the only time, or one of the few times, he was on the ice that Troy Murray was not. They tied the game 2-2, and then Rick Patterson, a nice little move around Gretzky in the Edmonton zone, moved in close and clipped one by Fuhr. Patterson is first from Peter Marsh and Troy Murray at 16:23 to give the Hawks a 3-2 lead. Chicago out shooting Edmonton 13-9 in the second period, and they took a 3-2 lead into the third. It stayed that way for quite a while, with the Blackhawks having a number of narrow misses and the Oilers the same, but the Hawks eventually took a 2-goal lead when Steve Larmer, after having a great number of chances earlier in the game, finally managed to cash one in. Now the draw controlled by the Oilers. On the far side, here's Savard holding it in for Doug Wilson, moving right in center. One more! They score! Larmer! Steve Larmer, who has been ultra frustrated all night long. He's had a bucket full of chances earlier, but this time, after a great feed from Doug Wilson, he didn't make any mistake. 4-2 in favor of the Blackhawks. Steve Larmer is 11th of the year from Doug Wilson and Dennis Savard at 13-10 to give the Hawks a 2-goal lead, but the Oilers close in again when Dave Hunter scored from the near circle over the shoulder of Esposito. Hunter from Pat Hughes and Kevin Lowe at 17:58, and the Hawks weren't out of the woods yet, but there was some icing to be put on the cake into an empty net. Now leading the rush to center, puts it over the line, Ralston the drive, Esposito the save, Doug Wilson the rebound to the near side, and the Hawks clear it to center. 10 seconds left, Wilson stealing, time for the open net, he scores! The Blackhawks are going to break their 5-game losing streak against the hottest team in the league. 5-3, Chicago. Doug Dougie Wilson, the empty netter, is fourth of the year unassisted at 19:52 to complete the scoring. The Hawks out shooting Edmonton 13-9 in the final period. And for the game, the Oilers 31 shots and the Blackhawks with 30. The three stars again tonight. Bill Gardner, the game's number 3 star. The game's number 2 star. If anybody came here to watch Wayne Gretzky, you didn't get much of a look at him without seeing Troy Murray, and deservedly a second star given to Troy Murray. Gretzky with only 1 assist, and that came when Murray was not on the ice. And the game's number 1 star, the senior elder statesman of the National Hockey League, 40-year-old Tony Esposito, who hasn't played for 2 weeks. Last time he started was 2 weeks ago tonight when the Hawks beat Hartford 6-1. Esposito, appearing in only his 5th game of the year, turned in probably his most outstanding performance, and he captured the game's number 1 star. The final 5-3 Blackhawks. Will have some final comments after this.
Let's join WIND's Pat Foley for the Chicago Blackhawks pregame show.
Friend of ours. The Blackhawks at long last return home as they take on the Buffalo Sabres tonight. Hello again, everybody. Pat Foley from Chicago Stadium. It's been a while since we've seen this place, and it looks pretty good after taking only 3 points out of a possible 12 on the road. Tonight, the Blackhawks and the young and talented Buffalo Sabres from Scotty Bowman. We'll have some more information after this on WIND. Buffalo so far this year with a record of 16 wins, 9 losses, and 3 ties. The Sabres have done well on the road with the exception of last night. They got thumped in St. Louis. The Blues beating the Sabres by a score of 8-2. However, overall this year, Buffalo nearly at 500 on the road. They're 6-7-1 away from home, so they have done pretty well away from their own building. The Blackhawks come into the action tonight 3 games below 500, and the Hawks have now fallen 7 points behind the front-running Minnesota North Stars in the Norris Division race. Tonight, the Hawks and the Sabres, and we'll hear from Orval Tessier after this on WIND.
Back home tonight, licking wounds a little bit after only 3 points out of the 12 on the road, and I suppose walking into Chicago Stadium was a pretty good feeling for a change.
Well, you know, Pat, we left on the road trip wounded, and as you say, we're licking our wounds coming back. But the one consolation on the road, I thought, is that we got back to our basics on the road, where outside of the Islander game where they blew us in the second period, we played very fine defensive hockey on the road with the lineup we could present, and that's encouraging for the future as far as I'm concerned. And we got through it without say falling into last place or anything like that in our division. Now we're so bunched up for the clubs. Minnesota's got a bit of a lead, but if we can play well at home now and hopefully get 1 or 2 of the guys back, there's some that won't be back for a long time, we can still be in the race, and I'm a little bit optimistic that way.
You know, that's the one thing about it. You look at that trip, and yeah, you only did get, but you had a goals against of well under 3. You were like 2-6 or something like that. So, you know, and we've talked about it before on these pregame visits, just the fact you've lost so much firepower. You've got to try to win a game with only maybe 2 or 3 goals that you're going to be able to score. And but like you say, if you can continue to play the style of defensive hockey that you've presented here and get some solid goaltending, as Murray Bannerman has given you lately, you know, you're going to be in pretty good shape when you finally get a little bit of health back here.
Well, I think we had to come back to that because at the start of the year we were losing on the road with the whole team, and our goals against average was around the 6 mark. We had a couple of 10s and some 8s and so forth, and I felt that we had all our firepower then, and we were getting 5-6 goals but giving up 10. So I was trying to explain to the guys then that this is not the style that we played last year on the road where we were successful. And I think maybe with all our injuries, maybe it's sunk in that maybe we should go back and do the things we know how to do best, and the road trip might have been a positive point that way. We don't have the goal scoring right now, so we've got to make sure that we hold the opposition to very few goals.
You talk about the injuries and what may be coming up here. We just saw Troy Murray and Kurt Frazier both on crutches there, I assume a ways away, but I guess you got a little bit of encouraging news when Al Secord began to skate the other day. What's his prognosis?
Well, he's getting some mild skating in right now, not with the team, of course, and he is skating only 10 or 15 minutes. I think that Al is quite a ways away from playing a regular shift. but at least it's very encouraging to see him around the dressing room and see him out there before we're there, and I think it adds a little bit to us. So the guys like to see him out there, and the type of competitor that he is certainly going to do his utmost to get out there as soon as possible, but we don't want to rush the situation. We've waited this long. We want to wait till he's absolutely right before he's out there, and I haven't seen the doctor since I've come in the dressing room a few minutes ago, but hopefully he'll fill me in a little bit on what we can expect maybe in the near future.
Yesterday, of course, the trade was made with the Pittsburgh Penguins, the first of maybe a couple. Who knows about that? But Greg Fox going to Pittsburgh for Randy Boyd. There were a few shots delivered your way from Greg before he decided to leave. Any particular feelings from your end on his departure?
I didn't even read the newspaper, so I don't know what shots it took at me, but I guess it's normal procedure that any player that departs will take shots at people, and I guess he's no different but anybody else. They all think they're Bobby Orr's when they're playing here, but when all of a sudden they depart, they think you're the worst coach that they played for. So I think that the coach has to take the brunt of the trades, of course. He doesn't make them, but he takes the brunt of it. And if Mr. Fox didn't like the way that I handled my hockey club here, well, maybe he should have tried a little harder, because I think there's about 18,000 people that backed me up on that.
What about Randy Boyd, the newcomer? Might we see anything of him tonight? And I know that you've seen him before. What would you list as his assets and his liabilities?
Well, when Randy Boyd played his junior hockey, I wasn't in the same league. I was in the Quebec League, so I don't know Randy Boyd that well. A lot of people say you know Randy Boyd. I don't know Randy Boyd that well. I've seen him play a few times for the Ottawa team. At that particular time, he was certainly probably the top defenseman in the Ontario League, and he was voted so, I believe. Whatever happened in Pittsburgh, I don't know, and I couldn't care less. And as I talked to him today, don't bring me the problems you've had up there, because I'm not the same type of guy that'll take parting shots at anybody. Just start from page one. I don't know what the club has in store for you, but I don't want to know what went on in Pittsburgh. That's not my business. We hope that Randy will turn out to be a good defenseman. The other guy was 30 years old. This guy's 21. We have some time to see if he'll develop or not. We had offered Greg Fox to everybody in this league in Europe probably, and nobody took him. So when we had an opening to move him, we did, and I don't blame Bob Pulford, even though I'm taking the brunt of it. But Randy Boyd could prove to be a find at 21 years old. He certainly was an excellent junior player by all reports. We just have to see if he can play the National League.
I know he got here today, although he didn't skate. Do you plan on using him tonight?
Well, he'll be in the lineup tonight. I don't know to what extent he can be used, of course, but he will be in the lineup tonight.
The Buffalo Sabres, a mix of veteran players and a lot of youthful and talented players. They got shellacked last night in St. Louis, which I guess puts a little hornet in their nest. But you know that they're good because they knocked you off in Buffalo. What do you need to do tonight as opposed to what happened in Buffalo when their 5-2 win?
Well, we played well in the first period in Buffalo and held them to 5 shots and had a 1-1 score, and then we stopped forechecking, and then we did take some bad penalties in the second period, and they scored a couple of power play goals. We have to forecheck them as much as we can and hem them in their own zone. I think that's the spot maybe where they are vulnerable. They'll score goals on you if you let them come into to your zone, and if we can play as solid defensively as we have lately, and maybe get a couple of breaks and put some pucks in the net, but I think pressure in their zone is what we're looking for tonight if possible.
Good luck.
Thank you.
That's Orval Tessier. You've been listening to the Hawk pregame show. Now stay tuned for Chicago Blackhawk hockey.
The Chicago Blackhawks pregame show with Pat Foley has been brought to you by Anheuser-Busch, brewers of Budweiser and Budweiser Light beers. By Armour, a Chicago tradition of fine meat products, available at Dominic's Finer Foods, and by Valvoline Oil Company. Valvoline, the symbol of protection.
First period summary now. The Buffalo Sabres got the only goal of the period on a power play when Hannu Virta scored from the face-off dot in the near circle. Virta assisted by Phil Housley and Real Cloutier at 8:34 for the only scoring in the game so far. Each team had one minor penalty in the first period, and there was a 5-minute major on each team for fighting. The shots on goal in the first period, the Blackhawks had 11, and the Sabres had 7. So there is your first period summary, and the score at the end of one, The Sabres won, the Blackhawks nothing. We'll be back to have a chat with Jimmy Pappin after this timeout on WIND. Here's the second period summary now. The Hawks trailing 1-0 coming into the period, but early on they tied the game on this play. Here's the goal right on. It's a rebound. They score! Daryl Sutter and the third chance. Barrasso stopped the first shot. He made the rebound save, but he couldn't control it, and Sutter jammed it right into the goal, just out to the goal crease. And the Blackhawks are on the board. They've tied it up at 1. Daryl Sutter is 8th of the year from Keith Brown and Steve Ludzik at 3:27 to tie it, and the Hawks took the lead a few minutes later on a power play. Bob Murray out of his own zone, to Savard, weaving over the line. Savard to the near side, over to the far point. Bob Murray centered it. They score! Bob Murray centered one. Daryl Sutter was right there. I'm not sure whether Sutter got a piece of it or not, but he was right on the spot just outside the goal crease, and Bob Murray's perfect pass was right there. It hit the near post and trickled into the cage. The Hawks lead 2-1. Daryl Sutter did indeed tip it in for the power play goal, his 9th of the year from Bob Murray and Dennis Savard at 7:23 to give the Hawks the lead, and they increased it a short while later on this play. Wilson to the near side center. Well, they score! Ben Wilson with a great run, and he set the table for Tim Higgins as Higgins scores his first goal of the year, but it was Ben Wilson who went from coast to coast to set it up. 3-1 Blackhawks. Tim Higgins with his first from Ben Wilson, and Murray Bannerman at 12:13 to finish the scoring. They're playing the Scoro here in the stadium. The shots in the second period, 11 for the Hawks, 7 for the Sabres, and the two-period totals. Chicago 22 shots and Buffalo with 14. At the end of 2, it's the Blackhawks 3 and the Sabres 1. We'll be back with a third period in a few minutes. Now back to the studios for all the sports news of the day. I'm Pat Foley on Talk Radio 56.
Big night in the National Hockey League and in the NBA.
Hello, Sabres. It's all over. Blackhawks with only 3 wins in their previous 15 games. Conversely, the Sabres were 10-3 in their last 13. But the Blackhawks tonight, with a strong defensive performance, record the victory before just under 17,000 in the stadium.
Buffalo Sabres 11 for a total of 25. The Blackhawks 8 for a total of 30. Coming up, the J.B. Robinson Jewelers 3 stars of the game. The game's number 3 star, Chicago's Murray Bannerman. The number 2 star of the game, Chicago's Keith Brown. And the J.B. Robinson Jewelers number 1 star of the game, Chicago's Daryl Sutter.
4-2. Here's the game summary now. 16,740 here tonight in Chicago Stadium. They saw the Sabres score the only first period goal when they worked a power play with fine precision, and Hannu Virta wound up scoring the goal, assisted by Housley and Kluche at 8:34 for the only first period scoring, although the Hawks outshot the Sabres 11-7 in the first 20 minutes. But the second period is what told the story of this game. The Blackhawks had good, solid control of the middle period and scored 3 goals, which proved to be enough. Daryl Sutter started it by scoring his 8th of the year on a rebound after Barrasso had come up with 2 saves. Sutter from Keith Brown and Steve Ludzik at 3:27 for a 1-1 tie. And then on a power play, Bob Murray with a fine pass that Daryl Sutter tipped in for his 2nd of the game and 9th of the year. The power play goal assisted by Murray, Bob Murray and Dennis Savard at 7:23 for a 2-1 Hawk lead. And then Ben Wilson with just an excellent rush from coast to coast as he picked it up deep in his own zone. walked out to center ice unchecked, but then beat a man at center, fought off another check in the Buffalo zone, and put a perfect pass right on the stick of Tim Higgins, who was busting to the net, and Higgins didn't make any mistake as he scored his first of the year. Higgins from Ben Wilson and Murray Bannerman at 12-13 as the Hawks finish off the 3-goal second period blitz. Again, the Hawks out shooting Buffalo 11-7 in the middle period and had a 3-1 lead going to the third. And then early in the period came the important insurance goal that the Hawks were looking for. Here's what happened. Back of the goal, Savard. He's wrapped up there. Sear dug it out. Out to Brown. Tees it up. Shooting. He scores! Keith Brown from the top of the near circle. And the Blackhawks have taken a 3-goal lead on the goal from Brown. It's 4-1 Chicago. Dennis Sear with some big work behind the goal to set it up, and Keith Brown scored his 6th of the year from Sear and Savard at 6:17, and the Sabres cut into it when there Paul Sear scored from Moeller and Andrechuk at 10:37, but Buffalo could get no closer. The Sabres out shooting Chicago 11-8 in the third period, but for the game, the Blackhawks 30 shots and Buffalo with 25. Again, the 3 stars, Murray Bannerman stopping 23 of the 25 shots he faced. Bannerman, the 3rd star. Keith Brown with a goal and an assist was the game's 2nd star. And Darryl Sutter with a pair of goals tonight, the game's number 1 star. Your final 4-2 Hawks. Jim Pappen and I will wrap it up after this on IND. The whole complexion of the period could have been changed, possibly, had the Hawks capitalized. They had a basket full of chances in the first 4 minutes of the period. About 5 glorious scoring opportunities for the Hawks in the first couple of minutes of that period, but Billy Smith was miraculous at times in goal for New York and shut the door, and from there on the Islanders just took the period over. The scoring started when Clark Gillies scored from Anders Keller and Thomas Johnson at 5:51 to give New York a 2-1 lead, and then about a minute and a half later, Mike Bossy with a deflection, assisted by Potvin and Tessier at 7:33 for a 3-1 Islander lead. Then Bossy struck again, this time from Dave Langevin and Tessier at 13:33 to give the Islanders a 4-1 lead. And then in the late stages of the period, New York with 3 goals in 2 minutes and 8 seconds. That sequence started when John Tonelli rifled one in from the top of the far circle, assisted by Nystrom and Potvin at 17:45. Then it was Brent Sutter, assisted by Mike Bossy at 18:55. And the scoring miraculously, or thankfully, came to an end when Greg Gilbert slipped in a backhander from close range, assisted by Potvin at 19:53. 2 minor penalties, both for the Islanders in that period, and the shots on goal. The Blackhawks had 10, the Islanders had 12, and 6 of their 12 went in, while none of the 10 Chicago shots went in. And of those 10 Chicago shots, I bet there were 4 or 5 in the first 4 minutes, and a couple of them just outstanding chances, but Smith rose to the occasion. The 2-period shot totals, the Hawks 23 and the Islanders 21. But on the big board, it's New York 7, Chicago 1. Back here shortly for the 3rd period, but now we'll get you back to the studios for all the sports news of the day. I'm Pat Foley on Talk Radio 56. Your Chicagoland... 15,850 a sellout here in the Nassau Coliseum tonight, and they saw the New York Islanders grab the lead at 15-12 mark when John Tonelli scored, assisted by Dennis Potvin and Bobby Bourne to give New York a 1-0 lead, but it only lasted for a couple of minutes because Doug Wilson came back for the Hawks. Wilson scoring his 6th of the year from Bob Murray and Dennis Savard at 17:52 to finish the first period scoring, with the Hawks out shooting the Islanders 13-9 in the first period. The Blackhawks, although they outshot New York, the Islanders did have the better of the scoring chances in the first period, but still it was not a bad period all in all for the Blackhawks to come in here and get out of the first period tied at 1. They were certainly in the hunt. And then the biggest sequence of the game for Chicago came in the first 5 minutes of the second period, when they had about 5 glorious chances to score, and Billy Smith stood on his head during those 5 minutes to close the door, often in spectacular fashion, and he held the Hawks off while they were going strong in the first 5 minutes of the period. Then the Islanders got going, and once they did, the floodgates opened. A 6-goal second period for New York, which started when Clark Gillies scored from Anders Keller and Thomas Johnson at 5:51 to give New York a 2-1 lead. Then it was Mike Bossy scoring from Dennis Potvin and Brian Trottier at 7:33 to make it 3-1, and then Bossy again, this time from Langevin and Trottier at 13:33. The Islanders had a 4-1 lead, but they weren't content with that. They certainly didn't sit on it. In the final minutes of the period, they scored 3 times in 2 minutes and 8 seconds. The first of those goals came from John Tonelli, who blew one in from the top of the far circle, assisted by Nystrom and Potvin at 17:45. Then Brent Sutter with a point-blank backhander, assisted by Mike Bossy at 18:55 to make it 6-1. And then Greg Gilbert finished the onslaught. Gilbert from Dennis Potvin and Brian Trottier at 19:53 as the Islanders outshot the Hawks 12-10 in the second period, but they took a 7-1 lead into the third. Then Brian Trottier scored his first of the night, up 3 assists. Trottier assisted by Bossy and Langevin at 4:20 to give the Islanders an 8-1 lead. Dennis Savard finally, after the Blackhawks had gone 0 for 5 on the power play tonight, Savard struck for a power play goal, his 18th of the year, from Bob Murray and Doug Wilson at 10:26. But Mike Bossy answered that for New York. Bossy, his hat trick for the game, assisted by Trottier and Bourne at 16:02, and the Hawks wind up the scoring on a power play goal again by Savard, his 19th of the year, from Rich Preston and Bill Gardner at 19:12 to finish the scoring. The Hawks out shooting New York 15-8 in the third period, and for the game, the Hawks 38 shots and the Islanders with 29. They only pick one star here in New York, and the star of the game, not surprisingly, was Mike Bossy, who had 3 goals and 2 assists, and his centerman Brian Trottier also had a 5-point night. He had 1 and 4. The final score, the Islanders 9 and the Hawks 3. We'll have some final comments after this on IND.